Welcome back to UCC Cadiz. We are so glad you are joining us today. Today, we are diving into a truly transformative message delivered by Brother June Macapobre. He breaks down a profound biblical concept called the kenosis of love. It is a powerful look at how Jesus emptied himself of his divine privileges so that we could truly understand what agape love looks like in action. In a world that constantly tells us to build our egos and climb higher, Brother June challenges us to look at the ultimate example of humility. As the classic Christian writer William Penn once said, "Love is the hardest lesson in Christianity, but for that reason, it should be most our care to learn it." This sermon asks the tough questions about pride, mercy, and what it actually means to step down, remove our ego, and serve others in grace. Before we get into this incredible message, please take a quick second to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. It is the best way to help us share these messages of hope and grace with more people who need to hear them. Now, let's open our hearts and listen to Brother June Macapobre. In his message, The Kenosis of Love, Emptying Yourself to Serve.
The kenosis of love. What is this kenosis of love? It is Jesus emptying himself of his divinity so that we can understand him. Connecting this back to your previous question, the Church Fathers saw kenosis as the ultimate expression of agape. We cannot understand divine love or agape without what is called the word kenosis. Because for them, you cannot have agape without kenosis. To love another perfectly, you must empty yourself. If you want to love God, you must empty yourself. Because if you say that you love God, yet you do not empty yourself, God will never be pleased. Because what is inside you is ego, right? And self-interest. You must make room for the other. In the pursuit of serving God, when it comes to loving God, you must empty yourself of pride. You must empty yourself of self-interest to make room for others, and that other is God himself. That is why. Remember, when we cried out to the Lord in his presence, there is something within where I can say, we are not an emotional people. But why is it that sometimes emotion and feeling come over us? That sometimes when the presence of God manifests, you will see that we are no longer ashamed to let our tears fall right there where we stand. You don't make a scene. You don't act artificially. You are not a religious performer. But you can ask, why is it that sometimes the Lord touches our emotions? Because remember this, the word pride, the word self-interest, the word ego, the very foundation of this world is built on emotions and feelings. And because of these emotions, what the wise call the wellspring of sin is right there in your human nature. Why do you get angry with your fellow man? Because of emotions and feelings. Why do you hold grudges? Because of emotions and feelings. Why is there bitterness within? Because of emotions and feelings. God knows that on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, you will see your emotions. You are in pride. You are in self-interest. You only think of yourself. But when the presence of God manifests, you will see He will make you understand. And you will feel something entirely different from what you felt on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. Because the Lord wants to make sure that you don't just feel bitterness, you don't just feel hatred, you don't just feel greed. He wants you to know and experience that aside from these things, to feel for God. Because you are created in the very image and likeness of God. If you can speak to God, know that He is an emotional God. He feels your needs. If you look at our needs right now, we are terrified of illness. We are terrified of poverty. We are terrified of businesses closing down. I believe if you are shedding tears, there is someone who feels your hardship, and that is none other than God. It is sad that for many, they no longer know the way to the God who gave them life. What they do is seek Him out through others. They seek Him in their fellow man. They seek Him in the mechanisms of the world. That only leads to discouragement and frustration. Do not look to man, because the only one who can truly provide for you is God. And a person should be thankful when he reaches the ultimate revelation in Christianity, that the one working to restore him is God. This self-emptying, denial of self, is what we call the kenosis of love. It is the bridge between the theological events of Christ's incarnation and the practical daily experience of Christian life. It is considered the bridge. Because if it is a bridge, you need to cross it. You will test the bridge to see how strong it is. Not just look at it, not just touch it. You will test the bridge to see how strong it is by walking from one side to the other. Just like this. You cannot appreciate Christianity if you do not take a step. You cannot appreciate Christianity if you are reluctant, hesitant to pay the price. You cannot experience how good prayer is if you don't pray. You cannot experience how beneficial fasting is if you don't fast. You cannot experience how beautiful it is to draw near to God if you don't draw near. Brother, I would like to say this with honesty. When it comes to transforming a life, religion can do nothing. The more you educate a person in religion, the more he becomes a religious sinner. Education has done nothing to change a person's life. The more a person is educated, the more he becomes a clever sinner. That is why there are wise people who can no longer be taught because they are already clever sinners. The more you educate yourself without submitting to the Holy Spirit, you make yourself so self-righteous that you can no longer be taught by others. How many people today in this world are well-versed in the Word of God, theologically informed in the basic foundations of Christian doctrine, who can no longer be taught? Because they are bound by ego, bound by pride, bound by their own abilities, which results in self-deception. So the kenosis of love, the emptying of Christ, the humiliation of Christ, the humility of Christ are considered the bridge between the theological events of Christ's incarnation and the practical daily experience of Christian life. Agape is the definition of love. You won't find any other definition apart from kenosis. You cannot define this according to the principle of eros. Because even the greatest love story known to people in this world, Romeo and Juliet, ended in chaos. You will not find perfection there in what is called eros. You will see sin. You will see immorality. You will see fornication. You will see convenience and adultery. Because there is no such thing as perfect in this kind of love. Even in storge love, there is no unconditional love that is perfect. There is no perfect principle. If you are looking for a perfect love, you need to know the word agape, the divine love. Because if agape is the definition of love, kenosis is its mechanism. Agape is what is called heavenly love. The mechanism that runs this love is exactly the word kenosis. No matter how good your truck is, if the mechanism is defective, it cannot run, friend. There will be a breakdown. There are broken parts inside. So, the love of God cannot operate in your life when you deny the word kenosis. Because kenosis is the mechanism for the word agape. You will see it describes a love that is not merely an emotion. This is a love that is not grounded in emotion. Storge, eros, philia, all of them are grounded upon an emotional foundation. But this love, although you feel emotion, is not based on an emotional foundation, a downward movement toward the other. It descends from above, going down. Isn't it that a person today who is poor, who lacks education, wants so badly to rise to the top? Isn't it human nature to climb upward? But look at this love. Man desperately wants to love what is above, but this is different. Its movement is downward, from above coming down. The sovereign Lord of the universe, who existed in eternity and perfection. What do you think of Christ? Solomon spoke a passage in the scriptures referring to messianic power, dignity, and majesty. There in Proverbs chapter 8. That wisdom existed together with the creator of the universe. And as Solomon said, this wisdom was the companion of the creator while creating all existing things in the universe. Wisdom is the co-worker of the Almighty Creator of the universe. And if you trace it, who is this wisdom? Wisdom in Hinduism, wisdom in Buddhism, spoken by Buddha and among the enlightened Hindus is formulas and ideas. That's what you see in philosophers. You see their words of wisdom always wrapped in formulas and ideas. But this one spoken by Solomon, if you dig deeper theologically, you will see the wisdom spoken of is a person. The Apostle Paul, in his revelation, said, Jesus Christ is the power and the wisdom of God. He said, I came forth from the very bosom of the Father. And because he came from there, he is intimately familiar with where he came from. Who is the most familiar with your house? Not me. Not the person next to you. The one most familiar with your house is you, who built it and lives in it. Therefore, Jesus was intimately familiar with where he came from. He came forth from the very bosom of the Father. And so you see, that is why he could say, he who has seen me has seen the Father. I and the Father are one. Because he came from the Father. But because he was in eternity, perfection, glory, majesty, dominion, and power, behold, he stepped down and became a man. That is why what we are talking about is downward. Who in this world that is rich wants to become poor? No one. The rich want to get even richer. The billionaire wants to remain a billionaire, and the billionaire desperately wants to become a trillionaire. But this one stepped down and became a man. He became a servant to men. Think about it. The Lord whom we serve came and served us. The God whom we should be serving and ministering to came down to serve us. The God whom we should be loving came to show his love for you. What a condescension of love. And then, if you look at it, the Lord upon whom we are to wait came and waited upon us. How old were you when you became a Christian? We are not the same. I became a Christian at 14 years old. Brother, 32. And all of you here are different. Some at 20, some at our visitor, Alexis 13, is already a Christian. We are all different. Some of us at 50. But just imagine how long the Lord waited for the time to come when you would accept him. He waited so patiently for you. We were the ones who should have waited, yet he was the one who waited for us. The Lord to whom we should minister, ministered to us. We ought to be the ones ministering to the Lord. But he came down, stepped down from his glory and majesty, and ministered to us. The Lord whom we should seek came and sought us. As he said, for the Son of Man came into this world to seek and to save the lost. Remember this. One of the greatest theologians I have read. He thoroughly examined what the word grace is, what the word mercy is, and what the word love is. He studied the original Greek text, and so that the word grace has nothing to do with God when you distance yourself from him. It has nothing to do with God because it is for those who draw near to Him. The life you live has not pleased God. If you live in sin, if you live in disobedience, God is definitely not pleased with you. But because of grace, He gave it so that even if you cannot please Him, even if you have offended Him, He calls out a reason full of grace to make you understand. If you are a rebel, do not pretend that God is not pleased with you. Grace is the mechanism that forgives your sins. And once you are forgiven, you begin to please God. And He freely gave it so you wouldn't feel that His presence is turning you away. You can stand. You can pray. Without grace, your prayers would be an abomination to God, and God would not listen. But the moment you receive grace, He becomes pleased with your prayers. So you see, grace is the attribute of God that makes you worth it to stand in His presence in spite of your unworthiness and your sinful nature. But what is mercy? Mercy is God's attribute of compassionate sorrow for someone suffering, distressed, and unhappy, even though their suffering is of their own making. Sometimes there is suffering that is caused by others. There are people who ended up dead on the streets, in the hospital, hit by a drunkard. He suffered because of the sins of other people. But there is suffering that you yourself made. It is called self-induced trouble. You are the one who created these sufferings. Like for instance, you keep smoking, you keep drinking what is called, you keep drinking alcohol, you keep doing what is called drugs. And then the consequences of that is suffering. But in those sufferings, if you can just find your way to the mercy of the Lord, you have hope. Why? Because God is merciful, that even if you suffer from your own doing, and if you truly approach Him, you will see that He is merciful to you. But this love is different. It is different from these two. Because love is what saves you from going astray. As Isaiah said, you are like a sheep that went astray on your path. The path the Lord intended for you to take is this path. You went astray from this path. The Lord intended for you the path of peace, but the one you took is the path of trouble. You went astray. Missing the purpose and the plan of God. But what does the Lord do? To keep my hope mounting. You went astray in your religion. You went astray in your education. You went astray in your livelihood. Living in foolishness. That is why Gandhi said, one of the greatest tragedies of humanity, he said, is politics and business without conscience. Politics and business where it seems the conscience is not working. If your conscience no longer works, all you look at is profit, not the well-being of the people you are exploiting. That is what happens in what is called we went astray. But because God is loving, He took us and placed us on the right path. Two statements in this verse need diligent study. In this part, there is a need to deepen our study. In King James Version, it said, although he existed, Christ existed in the form of God. Thought it not robbery to be equal with God, but made himself of no reputation. He made himself without honor. And then if you look here, Jesus made himself nothing. He emptied himself. He made himself of no reputation. He humbled himself even into the death of the cross. And then you will see the word nothing, ekinosen, means completely empty. Like this, the life of Christ, full of majesty, power, dominion, receiving the praises and adoration of the myriads of angelic hosts, surrounded with thousands of angels, receiving the praises and adoration. He came down. He emptied himself. He poured this out. He became empty. That is why if you look at the life of Jesus, he got hungry. He got thirsty. He felt weary because he emptied himself. Does God feel weary? Does God get hungry? Does God get tired? No. But you see in the life of Jesus that he got tired, he got hungry because he emptied himself. The word nothing means to completely empty. It is the picture of pouring water out of the glass until it is empty. Just like what is called pouring this out until not a single drop remains. That is the life of Jesus. What did Matthew Henry say? As a brief statement of the fact, he emptied himself, divested himself of the honors and powers of the upper world, and then and of his former appearance to put himself in the rags of humanity. Rags of humanity. Look at it. There in the manger, rags were used to line his bed to the people he was in the manger. Who among us here was born in a manger? Who was born here with scraps of cloth used as diapers? No one. But the so-called Son of God, the darling of heaven, the wisdom of God, was born where no one cares. When this couple, the Holy Family, knocked in Bethlehem, there was absolutely no place for them. That is why he said, if you read it, you will truly cry. I came to my own, but my own did not know me. Where, when it was time for birth, where was the place? The place was there in the animal shed. No human would place their animal shed right in front of what is called their house. They put it away and hide it because it is dirty. It is full of urine, full of what is called feces. Just imagine how pitiful the Lord was. He was born there. He was born. What Matthew Henry said here, he said, he emptied himself, divested himself of the honors and power of the upper world and of his former appearance to put himself in the rags of humanity. Kenosis is the explanation, the mechanics of love. Understand this. Understand that while human goes upward, the Lord went all the way down. Why? You will not understand this if you don't have what is called biblical history. That there was a 400-year gap between the so-called Old Testament and then to the New Testament. The silent years. Why? So that in these silent years, they could deeply reflect and be taught well about the salvation of mankind. That is what the Apostle Paul said. In the fullness of time, the Father gave His Son in the form of a servant. He made Himself of no reputation. He stepped down from the majesty of heaven and then became. Jesus Christ was made in human likeness. He took the form of a servant and became obedient even into the death of the cross. The Word was made. This is called in Greek as genomai, as said in the commentaries. Means to become a definite entrance into time. That is why it was said there in the fullness of time, the Father sent His Son, who was born in the likeness of a servant. And then, it is not permanent. It is not a permanent state. It is not permanent that the Lord keeps returning to the manger, keeps returning to the cross. This is not permanent. It was only for a time, a particular period. It is a journey. What did He say in St. John 17, verse 5? He already made it known to the apostles. He was not yet nailed to the cross. He was not yet tortured. He was not yet pierced. He said, let us read. And now, Father, glorify me in your presence. Give me the glory that I had with you before the world was created. He is not permanent. He became known in saving mankind. He became known in saving us. But you will see that He went through the heaviest experience, where you will see there in Gethsemane, you will see. He said, Father, if possible, let this cup pass from me. But if not, I will endure it. Your will be done. What does it say in Corinthians 8, verse 9? Let's read it. You know the grace of our Lord Jesus Christ, that though He was rich there in heaven, He became poor here on earth, so that through His poverty, we might become rich. Someone became poor so you could become rich. Someone suffered so you could be happy. And that is the word kenosis. Who between the two is more important? The one being served by the person or the one serving? Question. Isn't the one being served more important? Let's just think about it. The question is, who between the two is important? The one being serviced or the one servicing? The one being served or the one serving? Jesus said, isn't the one being served more important? The one being served is important. That is why during the annual Thanksgiving, those you serve, they are important. If you feed your wife, she is important to you because she is being served. If you serve your children, they are important to you. Because it says here, let's read it. Isn't the one being served more important? But here it is. But I myself am serving you, even though I am your master. That is the expression of kenosis. I am your master, but I am serving you. While still at the table, He stood up and took off His outer garment. He took it off. Afterwards, He took a towel and tied it around His waist. And then He washed the feet of the apostles. Peter did not want to be washed. Peter was ashamed. Who among us, the Lord who stopped the storm? The Lord who raised the dead, who, while being carried to the cemetery, was met and resurrected to wash his feet. Peter complained, Lord, no, I won't let you wash them. I am ashamed before you, Lord. But the Lord said, Simon, if you do not let me wash you, Simon, you have no part with me. The problem with us as a sinner, we just don't want to be washed. That is the problem. The problem on us who are proud, we don't want our pride washed. The problem on us who are greedy, we don't want our greed washed. The problem on us that we are lazy to serve, we don't want our laziness washed. We want to be served. Do you know what is being taught? The love of the Lord, remember this, it has a purpose. That He loved you. Not so you remain an object, just always being loved. Test it on a child. Until they grow old in ignorance, they won't know how to take care of you. A time will come, the child who should take care of you will be the one to kill you. They are clueless about taking care. Why? You didn't teach them to become a lover. The Lord loved you. But you shouldn't remain just being given to. You shouldn't remain just being cared for. You shouldn't remain just being served as a master. He took care of you. He tended to you so that there comes a time that you yourself will take care of things to care. The problem in the church today, that's it, brothers and friends. Only a few are caregivers and there are many who need to be cared for. Brothers and friends, you are saved to serve. You were saved to serve. Not that you were saved just to be served, just to be handed things until you die. Not that you were saved to just be taken care of until you die. No. The Lord Himself came down and served so that we may learn to serve while we are still alive.
What a powerful reminder from Brother June. The concept of kenosis, truly emptying ourselves of our ego, pride, and self-interest, is not an easy path. But as we learn today, it is the only way to genuinely experience and share the unconditional agape love of Christ. This week, I want to encourage you to take this message to heart. Look for those quiet moments where you can step down to lift someone else up. Whether it is showing mercy to a coworker, forgiving a family member, or simply serving someone in need without expecting anything in return. Remember that when we pour ourselves out for others, we reflect the very heart of Jesus. We would love to hear how this message impacted you today. Please leave a comment below with your thoughts or a key takeaway from Brother June's sermon. If this video encouraged you, please give it a thumbs up, share it with a friend, and make sure to subscribe and follow UCC Cadiz so you never miss a message. Thank you so much for watching, God bless you, and we will see you in the next video.